welcome to Overtime Hockey Talk. My name is Mark Paul, co-host Justin Baker, and we started getting into it before we hit the record button, so I figured we're just gonna hit the record button and keep going. We're talking about Nazem Kadri, of course, getting a hat trick in Game 4, and saying, "Hey, this is for all the haters out there for me, particularly the haters who have been sending him some just super high level tweets about his ethnicity and religion." Good job. So Justin, yeah, let's just jump into this, and then we're gonna get to everything playoffs, but figured we should just kind of run with this. Justin, you were talking about his wife and tweeting out different people that were DMing them or different tweets, right? Something like that.
Yeah, so she had basically sent a bunch of screenshots to a reporter. Can't remember specifically, but
someone from The Athletic, I'm sure.
Yeah, maybe. Anyways, so this reporter basically took these screenshots that Nazem Kadri's wife have got of all these threats and stuff, saying, "I hope your plane blows up," or whatever. And this reporter basically posted these screenshots, and now the guys that were making the death threats to Kadri's wife were like, "Oh, now I'm getting threats. Can you please take these screenshots down?"
It's perfect.
What the fuck?
Now, I mean, neither person's right? Like, no one you shouldn't just go and threaten because someone else is threatening. Like, that's not going to do anything either. Granted, it is for a much more justifiable reason. Like, there's some righteous indignation behind threatening someone who's threatening someone else for something that is, I'll say, out of their control, or like it's their culture, it's who they are. Yeah, that's you're like kind of in that, like, well, you kind of deserve to get that. But I mean, hey, freedom of speech, you've got freedom to say whatever you want on the internet, but that does not mean that you are free from consequences of that speech. Maybe the government's not coming after you, but I mean, there are a lot of other people just like Nazem Kadri. He is not the only Muslim in the world. I mean, you just don't go after people for that. I mean, of course you're going to get death threats from someone else once you start getting found out. Yeah, it's ridiculous. But we'll keep it at the hockey level. Nazem Kadri scoring that hat trick and just coming out and saying, "Yep, that's for all the people that sent me racist tweets." Like,
oh, I'm sure that felt so good. I'm sure that felt so good.
I mean, and even on a lighter level, if that game wasn't guys, forget about the fact that, yes, I have been suspended in the past. Yes, I've done some stupid things in the playoffs. That is not the guy that I am anymore. I mean, Nazem Kadri, go ahead and try to make the argument that he is not pushing that superstar level. I mean, maybe not the best player in the league kind of conversation, but take this guy and put him on any team, and I think he's a point per game player. He's going to be one of the top 3 players on any team in the NHL. Like, Nazem Kadri has blossomed into a fantastic player. And I think this is the pinnacle probably for him. Like, this is all the crap that he's had to go through leading up to this season. And he's making good on certainly getting a new contract.
Did he pick a good time to go ham on everybody?
Did he take himself from being maybe an $8 million player, maybe 8.5, to where now, if it weren't for COVID, I think he'd probably be in the market for at least near 10, if it weren't for COVID. Now, because of the salary cap staying the same for, it'll be the same. What is it, going up $1 million next year or something like that?
Yeah,
but not moving a whole lot. He's probably not going to get 10. Although if he went for like a 5-year deal, he might be able to get 10. But if he goes for a max 7-year deal, I mean, I think he's pushed himself into that $8.5-9 million range. He's been unbelievable.
Yeah, it's tough, right? Because one, you've still got a flat cap for a couple more years. I mean, yes, $1 million is $1 million. You can go out and get yourself a fourth line guy for that money now, but still, that's not going to make a big difference. And you look at his seasons past, he's never once been a point per game player up until this point. So, a couple of years ago in the playoffs, he had a phenomenal 15-game run for Colorado. But, still, I think, a lot of teams are going to be a little tighter on the purse strings there, especially when it comes to guys of his age, right? When you get up past 30, you become a little bit more leery about handing out 7-8-year contracts to these guys. And,
it's true. As a 31-year-old, maybe not getting maybe you're looking for a 4-year deal, maybe a 5-year deal.
Yeah, he could probably cash in at $7.5 million. I think there's plenty of teams out there that need top line centers, top 6 centers. So maybe, he could find the right fit, still get that money, but 8.5, I don't think there's,
It depends on where he goes, right? Like if he just goes, I'm going to take whoever's willing to throw the most money at me, then he could. There is a chance he could get that $8.5-9 million if he really wants to go to a team that is just desperate for a really high end player. But what are the teams? Probably the Philadelphia Flyers have been most linked to Kadri, with him being basically the number one center out there to acquire after now not having Giroux, and they've got. Was it 17, almost 18 million in cap space? So they're like the team that could do it. Kadri kind of fits the mold of that Flyers vibe. And he'd be reunited with James Van Riemsdyk, who he was on a pretty successful power play with him at one point in Toronto. There's some potential intrigue, but I don't think he's getting that much from Philly. He could maybe sneak that much if it were a team like, let's say, the Buffalo Sabres or like Columbus. Yes, a team where, hey, we want you to come in and be the guy. Like he could go into Buffalo and he could be the guy. He could be their top center, and really like. But does he want to do that? Especially after being on such a good Colorado team, does he want to go and suffer again? Probably not. So
yeah, and you have that luxury of, right, you're the number 2 guy behind McKinnon. You don't have a lot of pressure on you to perform, so it's easier for him to put up good numbers.
But even when McKinnon was out, he was tearing it up.
Well, yeah, because he plays with Rantanen and Landeskog. Of course you're going to succeed. And that's no disrespect to him because he's still a phenomenal player.
It sounded like you were being disrespectful. Hey, why don't you tweet at him?
Yeah, oh God, I'm just gonna.
Just kidding.
I'm stopping.
Oh, the HR guy comes out. That's Justin. If you don't know, he works in HR, so he keeps us honest. At least internally, I there's been very little sexual harassment since Justin started on the show.
Very little, but still some.
Since we started the show together, so that's it. Still some. Have I harassed you in some way? Do we need to talk? Just sit me down with just one light bulb on
harass me with your eyes
on the crickety hanging light. Okay, well let's we'll move on from Kadri. Colorado and St. Louis play actually tonight, Game 5. They have a chance to go to the conference finals. Since I was actually surprised, I guess it's just been a long time, but Colorado hasn't been to the conference finals since 2002. Do you know the other team that has also not been to the conference finals since 2002?
I could not tell you.
The Toronto Maple Leafs.
Oh boy, okay.
Which based on the two teams over the last 20 years, it's fun. Like you wouldn't think, Colorado. The last time they've probably been to, like they're similar. Granted, Colorado won the cup the year before that. And
I know things started to go downhill after Sakic and Forsberg left, but I figured they probably would have at least been competitive. Right. I
remember they had some real down years, which is obviously that's how they got McKinnon. That's how they got Landeskog. That's how they got Makar. They had some down years. But yeah, after that, I remember there was a year where they barely squeaked into the playoffs with Craig Anderson as their goaltender. Remember that?
Oh yeah. I guess
I think they played the Sharks. And they almost beat the Sharks or something. Yeah.
Patrick Waugh left in 2003, so there you go. But yeah.
So they have a chance to go to the conference finals for the first time since 2002. You picked the St. Louis Blues to win this series, I believe, in 7, right?
I did say 7, yes.
Okay, so I mean, there's still a chance.
Viable.
Yeah, it's still a chance. How are you feeling going into this game 7?
I'm not feeling good about any of my picks, if I'm being honest with you right now. Maybe the Rangers, but...
Oh, yeah, you picked the Rangers. Yeah, I picked Carolina, and I was just watching. Like, I picked Carolina, Calgary. I did pick Colorado, though. That was the... And I picked Florida. So, Colorado, I think is probably my one saving grace. I do think Carolina will ultimately pull it out, too.
But I will say, St. Louis, I mean, if the Rangers can come back down 3-1 to Pittsburgh, I still think St. Louis has got a shot, right? They're a former Cup-winning team, at least most of that roster. I think there's 10 guys on that team that won the Cup. So there's still the core pieces are there that won the Cup, so they can do it, right? And, I mean, granted, Binnington's not going to be there to be the guy, so maybe Ville Husso has to step it up a little bit from the last game because he looked, not so hot. But, I'm 50-50 on the St. Louis team pushing it to 7 at this point. I'm just, I mean, Colorado just looks really good. I mean,
they do look really good. I mean, hey, St. Louis has beat them at home, so there's that.
Very true.
Like St. Louis beat Colorado in Colorado. Other than that, Colorado has only lost 9 other times all year at home. just remember that
9 other times,
and 4 of those times were in OT. So they've only lost 5 regulation games in the regular season, and then of course they lost game 2. Was game 2 overtime? I don't remember.
I don't
think so. I think the Blues won by a few goals, didn't they? Anyways, so it's not an easy task to go and beat the Avalanche in Colorado. It's going to be a tough one, I think, for the Blues. Yeah, the Blues won 4-1 in game 2, by the way. So, yeah, you're not feeling good. I mean, I think anything's possible for this Blues team just because of the fight they have in them. Probably out of any team in these playoffs left, you could go, well, this team definitely has the most fight left. Like, not including Tampa Bay, who's already through. But out of the 6 teams who is left, St. Louis is probably the that team where you're like, they could grind their way back into this.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if you look at Carolina, the Rangers, Calgary, St. Louis, I mean, I would take St. Louis over any one of those if being down 3-1 at this point. So
yeah, it's just, man, Colorado's just so good. And I think they really have learned their lessons. They have taken some losses to heart, and they weren't going to let what happened last year or in past years happen again. So I'm thinking they're going. And it looks like, man, does anybody just switching gears to a different series? Does anyone have a desire to stop Connor McDavid? Like, does anybody want to play when he's on the ice? Because so far, I haven't seen the Calgary Flames. Like, did they not realize that, maybe the best player to ever play the game is over there? Like, there's a legitimate argument that by the end of Connor McDavid's career, let's assume that maybe he wins a Stanley Cup or 2, just because if you don't win a Stanley Cup, no one's going to give credence to you're the best player ever. So if he wins a Stanley Cup or 2, and if he continues down this road for another 5 years and keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to be like, oh, this is the best player to ever play. I really think that he's in that conversation at least, and it'll take another 5 to 7 more years of doing this to be able to be in that, but he looks like he's getting better and better, which is unbelievable.
Yeah, I consistently like to look at players in terms of generationals, right? So maybe you take 15 or 20 year blocks and you say, okay, he was definitely the best player.
Yeah, like Crosby, he's the best player of his generation, of course.
Right, like you had Gretzky in the 80s, you had Mario in the 90s, but you can also throw names like Sakic and Yzerman in there too from the 90s, right? Those other guys, Messier, and but yeah, I mean, you're going to throw Crosby's name, you're going to throw McDavid's name by the end of his career, there's absolutely no doubt in my mind he's going to be up there. And I mean, it's insane the way he's playing. And there's still a possibility if Edmonton, because I don't know, I think Edmonton could have a decent shot if Mike Smith doesn't let in half, rink length goals anymore. They could get past Colorado. And if he goes deep into the cup, maybe 6 or 7 games, you could see Connor McDavid surpass Gretzky's total for, most points in a playoff year.
Yeah, I mean, he's at 25 points in 11 games. 25 points.
There's no doubt he could play 22
hilarious.
games. I know. And what's even crazier is we don't even talk about with Connor McDavid playing as sick as he is. Leon Draisaitl is hurt. He's averaging 2 points a game. He just became the first player in NHL history to go 4 straight games in a row with 3 or more points.
Wow. Yeah, he's those two guys. Yeah, the Oilers are peaking at the right time. They're that team. Like, Colorado's been good all year long. This is not a surprise. Edmonton, I mean, there was a time where I think almost everyone was thinking, is Edmonton's going to miss the playoffs, aren't they? Like, they have to get a goalie. They won't get a goalie. I mean, I know they vote on GM of the year. I don't know if it's before the season. I know everything else is before the season. But my goodness, Ken Holland should be in the running for GM of the year. If Edmonton goes to the Final Four, which it sure looks like they're going to go to the conference finals, honestly, Ken Holland should be in the running for top GM of the year, because I think out of all the other 31 general managers in the NHL outside of Ken Holland, or 31 out of 32 GMs would have traded for another goalie. They would have done something rash. They would have brought in, they would have done something to shake up everything. And he didn't do it. Like, everyone thought they needed a different goalie. Everyone. And he just said, no, we don't like anything else. We're just going to stick with these guys. And it has worked out very well for them. Very well.
Sure, we know Mike Smith is a good goaltender when he's healthy, right? But, sure. I mean, look, Kenny Holland, he just didn't have any options and any money to do that with, right? Unless
it was the first. He didn't want to give up a first-round pick. Right. He's like, I'm not giving up a first-round pick for this team. Which is so funny. I just love it. I love that he wasn't willing to budge, and now it's paying off for him. And you know what? They're like, how many of these teams going into the Final Four? You look at Colorado. They don't have a first, a second, or a fourth for this upcoming draft. The Edmonton Oilers, though, they have a first round pick. That's something to maybe behold in, because a lot of teams have given up their first round pick. Now the Rangers, they have their first round pick technically, but if the Rangers win this playoff series, it becomes a first round pick instead of the second round pick. So if the Rangers beat the Hurricanes, then they won't have a first round pick. So there's another team that wouldn't have a first round pick going into the next round. Carolina doesn't have a first round pick, and Calgary definitely doesn't have one. Does St. Louis have a first round pick going into next year's draft? They do. So you got the St. Louis Blues are the other team with a first round pick. So I mean, and Tampa definitely doesn't have a first round pick. I don't know if they have a first round pick till 2027, based on what they've done. No. Actually, I lied. They do have a first round pick. Well, they just don't have one the next 2 years. They have one this year.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, if you're Edmonton, right, you have to hang on to those first round picks, because, I mean, next year's cap hit, they're already over at $82 million after losing Koskinen's, $4.5 million contract. Now, again, a lot of that has to do with, they'll send guys down to the minors and spare a couple bucks. And
Darnell Nurse is increasing by like $4.5 million, so that helps.
Right.
That hurts.
But I mean, again, you need that first round pick to restock the cupboards, to bring in those prospects who can come in and play, top 6 or middle 6 minutes, because you gotta be able to be a deep team to compete in this league. And if you don't have any money to spend and you don't have, picks to deal, or you're willing to deal, right? You got to draft good, and you got to bring in those guys that can, be competitive and contribute offensively. without costing you a ton. So those entry-level contracts are so much more valuable to a team like Edmonton right now.
Sure. And you're not getting Evander Kane at $2 million next year either.
Right. Yeah, they're going to have to figure that one out.
Yeah, they should do everything they can to keep him for like 1 year. One more year.
At least.
Sign him for 1 year. But, yeah, you're right. They right now their projected cap space for next year is $2.3 million.
Yeah, the sad part for Evander Kane is because of his money troubles, he's going to go out and try to get the most lucrative contract with just about any team, I feel like. So,
right, of course.
Yeah.
And I actually think it's probably for the best because he's great for the first year that he's at a place. Like he should just he should sign a 5-year deal with a clause that says you must trade me after 1 year of service. You just have to do it. Doesn't matter what you can get. You just have to trade him every year, and then I think you'd be all right. All right. Should we just talk a little bit about the Panthers and the Lightning, since that series is the one that's over?
Oh gosh.
Did you expect this?
I mean, neither of us did, right? We both picked Florida in 7.
Right.
There was a good reason for it, right? We figured after watching last year's Battle of Florida, we were going to get something pretty similar, right? Maybe not necessarily the best series in the entire playoffs like it was last year, but we figured the way this Florida team is, they led the league in scoring. They brought in Claude Giroux, Ben Sherratt. They had all these amazing pieces. Carter Verhaeghe's been tearing it up. And, you would think on paper, right, this Florida team's going to really push Tampa. And, oh, by the way, Tampa doesn't have Braden Point. So
right, I know.
We could probably, dismantle this team a little bit easier. Not the case at all. I think I read something, and it just cracked me up, and I know you're going to appreciate this, but Austin Matthews scored more goals against Tampa Bay than the entire Florida Panthers team.
Unbelievable. And the fact that Florida is probably the deepest team coming into the playoffs.
Absolutely.
Outside of maybe St. Louis, you could give a nod to St. Louis being deeper, but they don't have the high-end talent that Florida has at the top.
No, I would still take Florida deeper.
Yeah.
I mean, they've got Patrick Hornquist on the fourth line. So.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the Florida Panthers. I think that Andrew Brunette said it best. He just said, hey, they've got more of a will to win than we do, and it doesn't help that they're out at a strip club after Game 3, which it's hilarious because. So I don't know if you saw this, that they I guess a reporter got a tip from their nightclub guy, they called him their nightclub guy, who said, I saw a bunch of Florida Panthers guys out that Sunday night. And if you think about the timeline, they had a 1:30 game in Tampa. They went out, and then they had a 7 p.m. game on Monday. So, they had a lot of time to kill. Not a good look, though, to be out at the strip club at 1 in the morning or whatever it was when they were seen there. And then being down 3-0, maybe if you're up 3-0, you would give it a pass. But down 3-0, you just can't do that. And I know that Andrew Brunette denied it, said it wasn't true, and the reporter was like, "Yeah, he denied it, but I mean, why would my random anonymous source lie? We have no reason to lie. He saw them there, and I confirmed it with him again. He said, I'm sure they were there Sunday night. So, out at the strip club when you're down 3-0. I mean, that truly there's the will to win. And you know what? Maybe they were like, yeah, you know what? Screw you, coach. You don't think we have the will to win? We'll prove it to you. And they did. Like an angry child, they just went out and went to the strip club instead of going home, doing the things before the biggest game of your career. Because pretty much all the players on that team, especially the ones who have been in the Panthers for several seasons, especially, guys like Barkov and Huberdeau, and that was the biggest game of their career, and they blew it. The biggest series of their career, and they blew it again. So it's
now what I would like to know is who was there, right? If it's the Barkovs and the Giroux, that's a big problem. Now, if it's guys like Anton Lundell and Mason Marchand and people like that, then okay, maybe I'll give them a pass, young and dumb. But when you're the voice, you're the leaders of that locker room, right? You should not be out at the strip club.
No.
So
probably not.
And I think this series, I hate to say it, but I think it's going to cost Andrew Burnett his job.
It should.
Yeah.
It should.
Listen.
Even though he's up for Coach of the Year. What if he wins Coach of the Year and gets fired immediately?
I know. Which could happen. Because
I think they'll probably give him another shot.
I don't think so, because I think really, I mean, you don't have a first-round draft pick for the next 3 drafts, right? You've traded everything away. Claude Drew's come out and said that he would entertain going back to Florida, which is great. So you'd have to move some pieces around, right? You might have to buy out Patrick Hornquist. That'll save you $3.5 million next year. And,
I think they could probably. I think somebody would be willing to take Patrick Hornquist.
Right. Well, maybe not. But again, even if you have to buy him outright, not a big deal, because you save $3.5 million next year. And again, I think they're going to make some changes, not drastic changes, but you could see a guy like Sam Bennett get moved. There's going to be plenty of teams that would want to take a 25-year-old at $4.5 million. So, again, I think really it's going to be hard to make changes with this roster, and it's easier to make changes behind the bench, right? And when you look at, if you're management and you're Billy Zito or your Florida Panthers ownership, it's easy to just say, well, Florida outplayed us. We got outcoached by John Cooper. So it's easier for us to just go ahead and
I guess it depends on who you can get. All right, who's willing to come in?
Maybe you could go get Barry Trotz right now, right, or Peter DeBoer. These are 2 guys you could look at and be like, "Oh, cool, they could make some drastic improvements." And these are guys that have a better resume, better pedigree than Andrew Burnett. And Andrew Burnett's still going to he'll go out and he'll get an assistant coach somewhere, and he'll get his opportunity to be a head coach again down the line. There's no doubt about that. But right now, I mean, he couldn't adjust, he couldn't make changes, and I mean, I hate to say it, but I think it cost him his job.
But they did win a round for the first time since 1996. So that is huge. Like, sure. we can't take that away. I was trying to think, would I rather have the Leafs lose in that Game 7 against Tampa, or would I have rather them won that and then get swept by the Panthers in the next round the way that the Panthers got swept by the Lightning? And that's actually a hard choice. Because
I'd rather lose in the first round than get swept in the second round.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a hard, on the one hand, it means you won a round, but on the other hand, your expectations go up and then you're really crushed. I think you still pick you win a round because you won your round, right? Like, that was something hanging over the Florida Panthers organization. They were the longest tenured team to not have won a round since.
They struggled to get out of that first round with a Washington team that is much older, a lot less deep, not terrible goaltending, but not very good goaltending.
Yeah, under average.
This is a team that I feel like if Tampa or Toronto had gone up against Washington, they would have walked all over them.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Maybe not 4 games, but, still.
Yeah, it's a tough call because you've got a guy who's up for Coach of the Year, and maybe that shouldn't matter, but maybe for this team, hey, we won a round in the playoffs. This is like an improvement, and let's see how far Andrew Burnett can take us. I think it really depends on who you actually can get to come there.
Sure. Absolutely.
If you like Andrew Burnett, and maybe you just want to surround him with some new assistants or different assistants, that also is a solution because of the firing mid-year. You don't get necessarily the guys you want in the other portions behind the net. And perhaps some of that, if you could bring in an experienced assistant coach, maybe that makes the difference and Andrew Burnett gets to stay as the head coach. Because the players like him. I know, you can tell the players like to play for him.
Oh, sure. I'm sure he's a player's coach. I mean, that's the kind of guy he comes off as to me. He doesn't come off as the disciplinary, stern guy. But, again, 3.2% on the power play, 71% on the penalty kill. The numbers weren't good on special teams, and maybe you could point the finger if you're Andrew Burnett at your assistants. But
I think that's where they go. That's your assistants are generally the ones running your special teams. So I think that they go.
Not Rod Brind'Amour.
Well, yeah. Well, Rod Brind'Amour is. We're not. Yeah, if Rod Brind'Amour was willing to jump ship and come to Florida, sure, I'm in. Rod Brind'Amour is that's
not going to happen. But what I'm getting at is his power play has been dismal. And so the last game I saw, he grabbed the clipboard, right, in I think it was game 3 or whatever, and he was running the power play at that point, and it didn't result in, a power play goal, but still, I mean, he's taking charge, right? I never once saw Andrew Brunette take charge like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's also a coach who has been coaching for a little while, and this is Andrew Brunette's first shot. Well, anyways,
sure.
We'll see what happens. I don't think he's going to get fired, but you certainly do, so we'll see what happens.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. John Tortorella interviewed to be the Flyers coach. That would be an interesting marriage.
Interesting.
Can you see I mean, I guess I'll say in terms of style and the type of guy Torts is, he maybe fits in better with the Flyers culture than any other head coach that's out there, in my opinion. I mean, just a tough-nosed, pulls no punches, willing to say whatever he needs to say kind of coach. I mean, and holds guys accountable. I think that the accountability side of things for the Flyers got out of hand this last season. I mean, do you think that it's a fit?
I don't hate the idea, though. I mean, I certainly think he does. I mean, he does squeeze a lot out of guys that maybe just aren't as talented, right? Look at what he did in Columbus, right? He had a roster that on paper wasn't as talented. I mean, minus the year he had Duchesne and Panarin, but really, he was always competitive with that Columbus team that just never had superstar players. And you look at this Philadelphia team; they've got maybe one or two guys that are pushing that star player potential with Ivan Provorov, or maybe you could throw in Kevin Hayes or I mean, I don't really know, but
I mean, and he did coach Cam Atkinson to the best years of his career.
Sure, yeah. It's more than possible that, he can get a little bit more out of Travis Konechny, because he's a guy that I just, he's one of those players where I just keep wanting a little bit more. And I don't hate the idea of Torts being the coach of Philadelphia. I know they interviewed, Barry Trotz as well. And another coach actually that I thought about that could be another good fit for Philadelphia might be Mike Babcock. I think this would be a good place for him to go in. And, again, he demands a lot out of his players. He's not the player's coach, and he holds everybody accountable. And that's kind of what I think Philadelphia needs. And that's, again, why I think John Tortorella would be a good coach, because he holds everybody accountable.
Yep.
And
no matter who you are.
Exactly.
It's funny hearing all this stuff about potentially Joel Quenneville trying to get back into the league. It was like, all right, Joel, I get it. You've been taking little classes or something. That's what he's been doing. And that's fine. Like, okay, you can, it's certainly like people deserve the chance to learn from their mistakes. It was also 10 years ago. It's hard to punish somebody for something that happened 10 years ago for the next 10 years following too. Like, at some point, you do have to give somebody another chance, I think. And especially if he's a good coach, which he is, he's a fantastic coach, and he can come in and help an organization, I think that, the second chance is warranted, because that if he works half as hard at kind of just working on his mistakes as he does working at being a head coach, then that he will make personal changes too. I can't say for sure. I don't know the guy, but at least that's what you'd hope. But I think of Mike Babcock, who certainly did not have the same level of scandal as Joel Quenneville. Wasn't forced to leave the league, or he can come back whenever he wants. But there was a lot of shit that came out about him afterwards, right? Like all the stuff with Marner and trying to tell, who do you think is the laziest player on the team, all that stuff. Where it was just like some embarrassing shame type of coaching, kind of an old school method of coaching, I suppose. He has at least gone, and he's kept pretty darn quiet for the last. What he was fired in 2018, or was it 2019 that he was fired? I think it was 2019. It was 2019.
Yeah.
So it's been 3 years since he was fired. I think now, like, if Babcock comes back, I think we can all go, okay, we're willing to see how this could go with another team. Like 3 years is a long enough time to kind of just change a little bit, change your methods, think through things a little bit differently. I don't know that 7 months is long enough for me for Quenneville. Like, it just doesn't feel right to have him come back and just coach a new team this next year. And you're like, what was the point in firing him? You should have just hey, why don't you just take a few months and go to sexual harassment training with Justin Baker, and they could have hired you, and you could have sat him down and poo-pooed him for a while, and he could have come back. But no, they fired him, and they made it so that he can't coach in the league right now. That's got to last longer than 6 months. It should be at least a year, and then maybe in 2023. Coming back, I don't know. It just seems like it needs to be a little bit of more time. But anyways, Justin, what else you got? Any other things you want to chat about before we take off today?
We got to talk about you mentioned it to me, and it piqued my interest. I hadn't really been giving it much thought lately, but now I couldn't stop thinking about it all day, and that's who's going to be the next coach of the Detroit Red Wings.
Oh, yeah, I'm so sorry. I was thinking about that earlier, and then I got off on a stupid Quenneville tangent. I told you earlier I wanted to hear who you thought was... Okay, first off, who do you hope is the coach of the Red Wings? And then who do you actually think will be the coach of the Red Wings, if they're two different people?
Yeah, to be quite honest, I don't think it'll be two different people. Now, Steve Yzerman.
Oh, so you've got the know. You're in the know.
Yeah,
you know what Yzerman's thinking.
I don't. Nobody knows what Yzerman's thinking. That's the problem, right?
Does Yzerman know what Yzerman's thinking?
Maybe he doesn't. I have no idea. So, the problem is right now. Yzerman, after Blashill was gone, he came out and he had a press conference and basically said, hey, I'm not making any list. Not making any list, but I'm not making any criteria for a head coach, right? He doesn't have to have NHL experience. He doesn't have to do this and this. And I sort of honed in on that doesn't have to have NHL experience thing. But he did say that, yes, I'll make my list. I'll go through it, whittle down, what I like, what I'm really looking for, what I like about this candidate, and then make my calls, do my research, etc. And I started to think a little bit more about what Yzerman's been doing at this organization, right? He brought in, obviously Chris Draper. He brought in, Pat Verbeek. He's brought in, Dan Cleary, Nick Lindstrom, Nicholas Kronwall, all these former Red Wing players he's brought in because, one, they're smart, intelligent players and they know hockey. But two, he's familiar with these guys. He trusts them. He has a relationship with them already. And I think he's probably going to lean similar. And when he said it doesn't necessarily have to be someone with NHL experience, I started looking at former Red Wing players who could be head coaches and not necessarily have had NHL coaching experience. And I kind of, more and more I thought about it, I was really excited about the potential of having Igor Larionov be the next coach of the Detroit Red Wings.
Wow. Igor Larionov. That's not a name
Bring in
I've
the
heard
professor. Yes. Listen, this is a team that, don't get me wrong, had Blashill kept this team going the same way they were in the first half of the season, he probably would have been here to finish out his contract next year. But they took a dip, right? And he's a player's coach. He does a decent job, mentoring young guys and developing, but really it's time to take that next step, right? And so I think of a guy who just, his hockey IQ is off the charts, and Igor Larionov is that guy. There's a reason they called him the professor. He was the smartest guy in the room. And I listened to an interview with Darren McCarty, and he said when we got Igor coming over from Russia, everybody instantly respected and listened to what this guy had to say. And I think about that because Igor would be the type of guy that walks in the room, commands respect, even though he hasn't had any NHL coaching, right? The legacy he brings to this Red Wing team, everybody knows how good and how intelligent this guy is and will listen to what he has to say. And he's done a good job already. He's coached the Russian junior team and already won. He won at the World Juniors, and then of course now he's been named head coach in the KHL, and he's had some success there. But I think he could he could come in and just, instantly bring credibility and respect to the position. Again, not that the guys didn't respect Blashill, but I think he kind of did lose the locker room a little bit there at the end. And, another name I thought of too that I think really is probably going to be in Russia for a while just because he's doing such a good job was Sergey Fedoroff as well too. I thought this is another guy, another Russian who's just killing it, but he went out with, I can't remember the name of his Russian team. They just won the Russian version, the KHL's version of the Stanley Cup. They were down 3-1 and he came back and they won the championship. And I'm thinking that's the kind of coaching you need when your back's against the wall, right? But I think, Sergey Fedorov.
Is it the Continental Cup?
Yes, thank you.
Or I guess it's the Gagarin Cup?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
And, but I think Fedorov will still be in Russia. I think that, they just got him under contract, so he's getting paid a boatload of money because he's the biggest name in Russian hockey over there right now, outside of players. And so, to me, Yuri Larionov would be an amazing choice for the Red Wings. Now, if you want to look outside that,
can I just chime in about Larionov? Maybe.
Oh, please.
Perhaps it is a choice that Yzerman would like to make. Now, Larionov was just named the head coach of Nizhny Novgorod Torpedo in the KHL, and he's expected to begin his duties in July. So he was just hired like a few weeks ago. So that would be the only. I'm sure he could back out if Yzerman came calling. Sure he could back out, but I would wonder. If at this point maybe he's still, he's going to do his Russian thing, and he's actually hit one of his assistant coaches is Nikolai Habibulin.
Oh wow, okay,
yeah,
I like that. Yeah, and again, that's a pipe dream for me, and something I think that would be just an amazing fit for Detroit. But now, if you want to look outside of that, you could look at some other, NHL available coaches, and really one guy I do like. Kind of a dark horse. You're going to have the Barry Trotz. I've even heard Mike Babcock's name thrown around about coming back to Detroit, which I don't think is going to happen. But I really like Rick Tocchet as a fit for Detroit as well. He's a guy who, again, he had that Arizona team humming. They had no superstar talent. Their power play was firing on all cylinders. They were playing really good hockey with zero talent, and he's been able to do that everywhere he's been. And so I think this is a guy that could, he's going to get a job. And I think he could come into Detroit and really get the most out of our players, just like guys like John Tortorella and, Joel Quenneville tend to do with, wherever they're at. They tend to get the most out of their players.
Yeah, Rick Tocchet would be a great choice for Detroit, just based on what he was able to do in Arizona. I think his tenure was cut short, unfortunately, but not necessarily because of the way that he coached, more or less just because of, just the crap that happens in Arizona. I think he would be a fantastic fit, and he played right around the time that Yzerman was playing. So maybe Yzerman doesn't, I don't know, maybe they're friends, or know each other. I don't know how well, but certainly they would be familiar with each other. Absolutely. I think that would be a good choice. One other wild card. I'm just going to throw out this little wild card.
Okay.
There's a few guys hanging out there that they haven't gotten an NHL coaching job in a minute. But I wonder if they would be a good fit. My first guy that I was thinking about, I did think about Mike Babcock, because that would just be a funny Mike Babcock going back there. There's Claude Julien's out there. Maybe not the best fit for Detroit, but there's a coach who has coached some young teams, and he's maybe not the most X's and O's type of guy, but I have heard that he wants back in, and he can squeeze stuff out of good players, and he has been known to to take some of these, maybe a team that doesn't have a lot of pieces yet, I don't know. Randy Carlisle's coming to my mind.
Randy Carlisle.
Apparently he wants back in. And he would be a fascinating choice for Detroit because I think he has this like almost in between a player's coach and kind of a hard-nosed guy. But I think he'd let guys play. And I wonder if that's something that these younger guys could use. Just somebody who, I guess, in my ideal world, I'm thinking like it would be great if the Red Wings could have like a Bruce Boudreau, somebody who's just light. You know that you're not gonna dominate every night, but you're gonna be hard to play against, and you're gonna teach fundamentals. I don't know. Those are a couple. Claude Julien would be good at that. I don't think he'd come to Detroit though. But
interesting. Yeah, another name I've heard, and especially because of Detroit's connection to the Swedes, is they've been looking at, there's been looks at a couple coaches out there, but Ricardo Grongborg, I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing that last name right, but he's been tearing it up. He's pretty much the best coach, in Europe right now. And there's been talks of him coming over to the U.S. and coaching in the NHL. So maybe that's one direction that Eisman looks at. But, yeah, I would love Larionov more than anybody else. But
I like it. It would be awesome if that happens.
Yeah.
And maybe in the future, he goes and is the head coach of this KHL team. He's successful. And, I would think that the Red Wings would be the team. If any NHL teams bringing in Larionov, it's the Red Wings.
Yeah, but here's the only con, right? The only con to bringing in a guy like Larionov or Fedoroff, who was a Detroit legend in the 90s and 2000s. How do you fire a guy like that, right? How does Yzerman go to a guy like that you're really close with and you're like, dude, I got to let you go? Like, that's just, you would hope that they're professionals, right? But
sure,
it's a little bit harder. You're going to give a guy like that a little bit more longer leash, to say the least.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, that's all I've got. I think that tonight is a huge night. Probably if you're listening to this, you already know who won. I am very excited to see if Connor McDavid can, put himself. I don't know what do you think? 30 points by the end of this series.
Oh my gosh!
If the series goes another game or two. Well, it's going to go another game, but two games. Yeah,
part of me wants Calgary to push this to 7 because I want Connor McDavid to rack up those numbers.
Right. It'll be fun. But he also has to win. In order to really rack those numbers up. So I don't think, assuming Colorado goes through, I don't think Edmonton's beating Colorado quickly. I did hear, I think it was Jeff Merrick. He said, could Connor McDavid win the Conn Smythe Trophy if he loses in the third round? Like,
right?
What if he has 45 points by the third round, end of the third round? Because that would, if he got maybe another 2 games, 3 points a pop, he's at over 30 points. He gets 2 points a game again in a 7-game series. That puts him at like 45 points.
Yeah.
in less than 20 games.
Oh my gosh.
Well, we'll see we'll see. Well, enjoy the game tonight, Justin, and we'll talk soon.